Hey guys, this is the 18th episode of Vapes4Vets. I just wanted to do this pre-recording before we get to the show. Ryan LeCompte joined us. He's got an excellent story. You're going to enjoy it. But unfortunately, during the podcast, he had a little bit of technical difficulties. So I'll be having him back on in the coming weeks, and we'll get the technical things sorted out. But anyway, enjoy the show. It's a long one, but a lot of great information. Vapes4Vets podcast. I'm here today with three gentlemen: Ryan LeCompte, Ian Benouis, and Matthew Kahl. Did I say everyone's name right?
Yes, indeed.
Good enough.
Yep.
Well, guys.
Benouis, it's a hard S.
Yeah. Benouis.
So the first question that's probably going to take up a lot of the podcast. How do you guys know each other?
Wow.
Oh, boy.
Who's going to cop to what?
We got time.
Well, I'll go. I found Ryan through the internet, through Facebook, and veteran strength theogenic therapy. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There's such a thing? You know, there's people that are veterans that want these kind of medicines to help. And yeah, so we became friends electronically, like a lot of people these days first. And then, yeah, so then I guess I met Ryan, and then, I connected with Ryan, but then I met Matt first in Washington, D.C. We were both lobbying there 2 years ago. And Ryan actually couldn't go with us because of personal commitments. And so Ryan made sure, though, that I was invited and got to go. And then that's how I met Matt. So.
And we're
yeah, which was
go ahead.
awesome trip, by the way. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask where are you guys all calling from? Matt, you're on vacation, correct?
I am on vacation here in Arizona, but I'm from Colorado, and we were out there in DC in early 2015. It was like March, April timeframe. We were lobbying for the carers bill, primarily.
And you're currently in Arizona. You enjoying the weather down there?
It's actually ridiculously hot, and I kind of want to go home, but there's a lot of cool stuff here.
How long will you be there, Matt?
I'll be here until the 24th.
Right on.
Nice.
So Ryan, you are one of the founders of Veterans for Entheogenic. Am I saying that correct? Entheogenic.
That's close enough. Entheogenic.
Entheogenic therapy. What's that all about?
Funny you should ask, Jesse. No, it's a 501c3. We just gained that status this year finally with the IRS. It's been a long road coming. Originally, when I filed as a nonprofit in Colorado, I assumed that was the process through LegalZoom. It's just a giant legal mess, but we finally got through all that, got our federal filing, and we're a 501c3 advocating and specializing in entheogenic therapy, specifically ayahuasca integration, psilocybin integration, any sort of natural plant medicine, indigenous to North and South America primarily. And then we also have an advocacy program where we tour the country, continental United States. We also do some foreign travels down in South America as well. But mainly, spreading awareness about these indigenous medicines and explaining a little bit about what we do after we get vets down for treatment. For one of the ceremonies, we'll provide a year-long integration course, which basically, provides the vets with tools to keep up their experiences in daily life. So we provide like daily mindfulness meditation practices, like Tonglen, practicing loving kindness towards self and others, and we provide affirmation work, laws of attraction. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's another one we use to just sort of keep up with the daily practices and insights gained from indigenous medicine in ceremonies. We also we have a sponsorship program when funds are available for vets to send them down for treatment with a legal church here in the United States called SoulQuest Church of Mother Earth, and we also that's the primary front that we pursue because it's feasible for veterans who maintain full-time jobs and can't always take a 2-week to a month-long program in the jungles of the Amazon. So this is the next best thing, and I've also had vets who say they can afford a $2,000 trip to Peru, so I just resource them with the retreat centers that we've scouted out ourselves personally, to make sure that they have the right kind of modality for what we're looking for. And that's been a big part of what we do is bridging the two worlds, because some vets that I get, the list is up to 500 veterans right now nationwide that are seeking this treatment through our program, specifically through our sponsorship program. And part of that is resourcing them with these retreats down in Peru if they have the means. And for those that don't, we usually, we'll outsource them to the church down in Florida to get them going on that. And like I said, follow up with about a year-long integration process.
I just want to add,
Oh, go ahead.
gosh, I'd love to add, I myself and my organization too would absolutely love to publicly endorse Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy and SoulQuest Church of Mother Earth. I went on possibly one of the first. What was it, Brian? Was it one of the first, or?
We had you were the first in the so Matt Kahl and Michael Cooley specifically had the chance to be a part of a documentary called From Shock to Awe, and the amount of time that they put into that film, which I believe will be released this year. Matt and Mike have testimony from before we even left to head down to SoulQuest, during ceremony, between ceremonies, integration circles, and leading back. I think they're doing follow-ups with you guys too. So you guys have sort of become like the poster child of this work, and it's going to spread a huge message coming up here in October, I think, is when they release it.
Yeah, the work they do is absolutely phenomenal, and it's been completely integral for my own recovery and the recovery of countless other veterans.
Ryan, does your organization stick mostly to states that have legal cannabis, or do you branch out across the country?
Oh man, I've got vets that so part of our pre-safety check that we do during our screening process in the beginning before we even send them down is we take a look at their medications, and I have a website and a psychiatrist that I refer all my cases to, and I have him review these medications and let me know what's contraindicated specifically with the MAOI inhibitors and ayahuasca, just for safety. And one of the biggest things with cannabis is it's pretty safe. It's the number one thing that I recommend to all vets who are like, dude, I can't get off trazodone, I can't fucking get rid of prazosin, I can't get off these ADD medications that are, again, all high risk with ayahuasca. So we just work with cannabis. It's a harm reduction model. And for the ones that aren't in states where it's legal, I don't necessarily condone using cannabis, but I say, man, if it's working for you and you're finding it underground, just stick with it, man.
Ian, you're I don't want to say you're a part of, you work with Weed for Warriors, correct?
Yeah, definitely support, Ryan and a vet and Sean Kieran over at Weed for Warriors, and I want to support all the groups that are, we're all working towards the same thing.
I was going to ask, Matt, your organization, Veterans for Natural Rights?
Correct, yeah.
And,
Veterans for Natural Rights.
And Weed for Warriors, do you guys ever work together with Vet?
Definitely. I mean, like I said, I've gone on the whole trailblazing, the vet tour down to SoulQuest Church of Mother Earth, and Ryan's a good friend of mine, and I don't have enough good to say about him. I love what he does, and I love the direction that we're all going here.
Yeah, and I have to say for the record too, Matt and Ian specifically from the beginning have been The two most important members of VET from the beginning, just offering their support. Matt really from the Veterans for Natural Rights. That organization really brings a libertarian view of these medicines, and I love the kind of enthusiasm that Matt brings constitutionally, because that's my other argument. You know, therapy, we're really focused on the therapeutic benefits of these medicines, but Matt just brings like a whole new energy to the movement of saying, look, man, this is we're talking about conscious liberty here, the liberty of consciousness, and that should be set the whole argument for trailblazing these medicines as therapies. I really appreciate that effort. And Ian, his legal counsel from the beginning, I had some falling out with some organizations in the field, and Ian was my number one consultation, and really a battle buddy that I could trust and confide in. And from the beginning, that guy had my back, and I really appreciate it, Ian. I want to say that on the air. It's been a blessing to have you and your support, and to be coming out to my house and hanging out with me and my kids, and playing video games in my basement, and just being a good support system, man. That's what this really is all about. I really gained a lot of inspiration from these two right here to center the integration program that we have now, just something we didn't do before I met Matt and Ian, and that is creating a spiritual battle buddy system. And now I'm able to send vets in pairs. Usually during the screening process, I'll ask one of the vets, I'll say, do you have somebody in your immediate circle who's a veteran who sort of would be willing to step into the fire with you? And they 9 times out of 10 will say, yeah, give me a few days, I'll reach out to them. So now I can send vets together. Like this weekend, I'm sending 2 right now that I got some funds in. I'm able to sponsor both of them to go down together and help each other out. And I have another set up for next week out of Texas. And it just keeps webbing out. And really the most important thing is community. That's what I'm finding after these ceremonies. That's the most important thing, is just building a sense of community. And Matt and Ian both, man, they're always in it. They're always in the grind of trying to get everybody together and create the space for us to have open dialogue and to support each other through this process.
I got to say that community is really one of the cornerstones of Veterans for Natural Rights too. We really started by giving out free cannabis and trying to get people together. Eventually what I found is that the cannabis was definitely an important tool, but it was the community. It was the one-to-one veteran interaction that really provided the most healing. So we sort of switched to a community-based model in which we could bring everyone together and start getting them integrated into not just a community of veterans, but a community of veterans and civilians too. Those things are extremely important. Veterans too often isolate themselves when they're suffering from PTSD and all of the associated ills of it. So if you can get them integrated into a community and out of their basement, out of their bedroom, then you can possibly save their life that day.
100%. You know, the struggle with it is that you know, it's a 2-tier system community. You really here, Matt, with the civilian piece, and we're trying to transition back into civilian life. So working with veterans, it's great to sort of like purge or vomit the struggles onto them, but it's sort of move.
Sorry, Ryan,
an action or bias toward action with civilians.
You're cutting out there, yeah.
Hey Jesse, I'll jump in and say, you know, thanks Ryan. I really appreciate the comments, man. It's been my pleasure, and I just want to be honest and say, you know, what I've really seen for myself and in the past, you know, 2 years of really doing this work with veterans is that one of the biggest challenges, like Ryan said, we're all figuring out you have to have a battle buddy, which is just a sponsor to do this. And then everyone's trying to do their work as they do these huge, you know, life transformations. And that's really the challenge. So, you know, we're not only trying to fix ourselves, but then we're all trying to work together, right, to do our advocacy to help other people. So, yeah, it's a real challenge. And Matt knows when we went down to Peru, like to speak to what Ryan's doing with Vet as far as this integration process, we had like regular Skype calls Monday and Friday, that were, and sometimes end up being a couple hours, but they're usually at least 2 hours to start. And then over time it went to 1 and eventually it dropped off. But you needed that there to support all the reintegration, because otherwise, if you don't, all your work is really lost.
Reintegration is the number one place where the actual healing occurs. You can try these substances. Even cannabis is like that. Cannabis at best is a Band-Aid. It's the best Band-Aid we have. It's the safest thing, but it is a Band-Aid, and like all these other substances too, if you do not do the work required of you after you use the substance, whether it's cannabis or ayahuasca, or any of the other modalities of healing, if you don't do that integration work after the fact, then nothing ever gets done, and you will never heal. The hard work comes after the fact.
Absolutely.
Well, a question I have for all three of you guys, Ian, your work with Weed for Warriors, Matt, Veterans for Natural Rights, and Ryan, Vet. Do you guys have to go hunting for veterans, or do they come to you, or do you have to go find the ones who really need you?
Seems like they pop out of the woodwork. There are plenty of vets who are at the end of their rope. They're desperate. They have no other source of healing. They have no options. The only thing that they're given, they go to the VA and they get a very, very long list. A laundry list of pharmaceutical pills, whether it's SSRIs or antipsychotics or opiates, benzodiazepines, you name it. The list goes on and on and on and on. Most of these veterans, they're just absolutely sick of getting medicated into oblivion, and they all want to find something greater, something to move on from the place where they're at. We're all stuck in our memories. We're stuck in the past. We're trying to get over that, and we all want to simply move on with our lives. These things, these substances and these processes, most importantly the processes after the fact, the reintegration, the community, these things allow us to do exactly that.
How about you, Ian? What have you noticed with your work with Weed for Warriors? Do they have a lot of veterans coming forward, or do they have to go looking?
The unique thing about that organization is it's really the frontline organization for vets. It's basically, you just got back, you know what I mean, and you need the support system, you need that community, and you need someone to help you begin your reintegration process. And that's literally what that kind of started as, like, here's the phone number. If you're a vet and you're thinking of killing yourself, don't, and call this phone number. And now there's chapters all across the country. So it's really that frontline organization taking veterans who, even if they've obviously been back, the wars the big part of it's been over for a long time, but even if they've been back for a while and they've had themselves cocooned and hibernating in isolation, and for whatever reason they finally popped up, they're there to answer that phone. And then as Ryan said, cannabis is this frontline non-toxic therapy. Like Matt said, it's it's an awesome Band-Aid, and it'll basically help treat the symptoms of PTSD for as long as it takes for that person to then go to the next step. But it's not really going to address the underlying trauma that they're going to need to address if they ever want to get the full healing. So,
have you guys ever had
It's a genius program.
Oh yeah, well, Matt, Ian, I've had you both on the podcast before. I've heard your stories. Ryan, I'm gonna ask you after the podcast if I could have you on just for you to tell your whole story. It sounds like you guys are just doing amazing things, and have you ever had to work together on a vet that needs that additional help?
Yeah. Definitely. Actually,
Yeah.
I think a good example.
I think it's been each other.
This past week, we had a veteran here in Colorado. He's actually a very good friend of mine. I started out by giving out cannabis myself to every vet that would come. Eventually, I started getting away from giving out cannabis at events, and another vet came into my circle. He's an amazing grower. He makes some of the best medicine around, but he was having trouble, and he was seriously thinking about committing suicide. So what essentially happened is a group of vets here on the Front Range, our little community, we all heard about him having trouble, and we alerted each other. And within about 24 hours, he had been contacted by a half dozen different veterans, and most especially Ryan LeCompte, who offered a trip to go to Soul Quest Church of Mother Earth to pursue healing in a different form than he'd ever tried before.
And is that...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It was a good opportunity for me to handle like these crisis situations. This is part of the program we offer with the right funding, and I just happen to have a donor, donate enough money for me to cover that particular veteran. It was a service that I'm glad I was able to provide.
And then I got to go ahead and launch into the Peru trip. Ian and I both went to the Peru trip, which Ian, he masterminded that whole thing. Just badass, by the way, Ian. I love you for that. But it was a fantastic experience. But there was 6 different veterans there, and to tell you the truth, it wasn't really. It was all of us working on each other. It was a group effort, and we all delved into each other's problems. We all brought something out of each other, and we all gained something from it. It was a massive group effort, and it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you create this virtual family, right? And that's what the deeper you go with, you've got the veteran connection, and you do that in a foreign country. It sounds awfully familiar to the military. So yeah, and Jesse, we still have those families, those drinking circles of drinking together. There's a veteran here in the U.S. I've drank with 17 times in the past 2 years, and another veteran and I. We drank like 27 times together. Well, 27 times each just in like the past, year and a half, up through last year. And the one that was 17 times, he just made some amazing transformation in the past couple of weeks. We went to a 4-day ceremony and then a 3-day, and he, finally made that transformation of his ego getting okay with the fact that, he went to war right after he was 18, and then basically deployed to Iraq twice, and then came back and put himself in prison with pharmaceuticals and alcohol and a couple 100 pounds for 10 years. And now he's found cannabis, and he's doing the rest of his healing. It's like, but he's been in prison for 10 years, and it took that much work, for him to really make that first big transition. So, Matt knows this, and Ryan knows this. This is all long-term work that, takes a long time, and everyone's got their own path and their own pace. And it is really key to have the spiritual battle buddy. I think that's what we've been trying to do for each other, just be battle buddies in all the circles where we can come together.
Ian, do you provide legal help to these organizations?
Legal counsel, and definitely understanding the laws around these medicines, right? The religious laws that do provide protection, right? There are 2 legal ayahuasca churches in the U.S., at least, that have been, from Supreme Court decisions. Everyone else who's doing it would also argue the same thing, that they're completely protected, under the Constitution. But it's sort of one of those things until there's a dispute. You can't, you're never 100% sure.
So one thing I gotta ask, you guys say you have all these different meetings, and you're sponsored. How do you go about finding sponsors for your events? Anyone?
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges. As we're as these veterans organizations, as we're building ourselves from bootstrapping and grassroots, is trying to find the right people to help us that aren't just trying to obviously take advantage of veterans, or really really care and are in it for the long haul. And that's a challenge. I don't have an easy answer for that so far.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a very easy answer for that either. Our organization, unlike Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy, we're not officially 501c yet. We're actually filing for our 501c4 currently. So hopefully we'll let you know whenever we actually get our status. But we haven't pursued any significant sponsorship from either commercial entities or individuals either. We haven't raised any money of any kind. It's all been bankrolled pretty much out of my own wallet. But I would like to think that there are people out there who are not just willing and able, but of the right mindset, that they respect the veteran position, and they respect the veteran independence that we are all so guarded of. But as of now, I simply haven't found it. I'd like to think that they're out there. Maybe Ryan has some insight onto sponsorship.
Yes, so donors with this 501, it helps incentivize donations because of that tax exemption and that tax write-off. But really seeking out, I'm just getting my feet wet with speaking out, like on media platforms like this one. I will plug that we have a fundraiser campaign. Our aim is to raise $250,000 this year to treat over 500 vets. And the math that my a financial advisor who's working out all the numbers for me, but our campaign is going to be based around this 500 number. And the list just continues to grow. That's just the list that we need for donating specifically for vets who can't afford flight costs and room and board, either at SoulQuest or I'm now starting a relationship with a shaman in Costa Rica, which is definitely going to be a lot cheaper than Peru as far as flight costs. It's around $1,500 to make that gig happen. So we're looking into that as well. And so right now it's basically, like I said, using media platforms like this. Anyone interested in donating, I'm sure Jesse will have a link in the description with a donate button there for our organization. And like I said, MC3, everything goes to a nonprofit. It goes directly, the proceeds, to assisting veterans with flight costs, with room and board, like I said, and we even provide help with transportation to and from airports if need be, if the vets are at a low income bracket. And we have a whole tiered system on which vet it requires the most amount of funding and support, and which vet can sort of just needs help covering flight costs, and which vet needs help with just resourcing that are willing to do that. And the other thing is really, like we have a fundraiser that we're going to be hosting in the area this year in October.
Sorry, Ryan,
where I have a
which
friend,
location?
Milwaukee and Chicago.
Okay, yeah, you cut out there, so I just wanted the audience to hear that.
Sorry, my connection's bad. It's raining out here, and thundering. So yeah, this event that we're going to be hosting, it's going to be at a public venue. We're getting the dinner sponsored and donated. It's going to be fully catered to a veteran organization. So again, there's that incentivizing that we are a veteran organization that sort of wins out the hearts and minds of companies and restaurant businesses that want to help genuinely. And that really is, just like Matt was saying, we are a tight-knit community, and we look out for each other. And if someone else, most likely the donors that I have someone that's been in the military, or knows someone, or has just a heart open to the warrior, and we appeal to that, and we've moreover been branching out to more civilians who make a wealthy amount of money, and we're trying to incentivize that donation with like in Chicago, we have a venue with a friend of mine who I served with in the infantry His name is Cameron Dupree. He after he had his quest, he was really struggling, and I drew his name from a hat and got him the treatment. He's been doing the year-long integration, and he finally got some inspiration to start a comedy group, a sketch comedy group called Stars and Gripes in Chicago. It's a Chicago-based, veteran-run, owned and operated, written, directed by veterans from every tier of war and every branch. They've covered every branch in that group, and they're going to come out and do a comedy sketch that's, orients civilians towards, like, everyday taboo shit that vets get caught up in the military. That's their shtick through comedy. And he said he's found just a huge healing modality with culture. So he's going to come out there and promote his organization and do this pro bono for us. And then at the end of his thing, he's gonna blog, why we're doing this, why it's important to donate. And he's gonna give a bit of his story of how he found healing through vet and through this program and through ayahuasca. And hopefully we'll get some funds raised through that.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's some parts of what you're saying there that was missed because it was cut out. But we'll I'm definitely gonna invite you back on, and we can get all those facts out there. I apologize, the connection's not the best, but sounds like you got I really hope that those fundraisers go well, and looking forward to hearing more about your organization here.
Thank you very much.
Ian, I would like you to introduce this person. Late addition to the call, I'm sure you all know him, Sean Kieran.
All right.
Sean!
we were just about you. Oh, you didn't get
Big Kieran.
Oh, I'm letting you all down. You didn't join the call yet. He's going to.
Matt, do you know who I told, David Hoban?
Oh, yeah, man. I met him a couple years ago. He contacted me out of the blue, pretty much. And I hung out with him for a few times, but eventually he just kind of fell off. I understand that he probably went through some of his own PTSD trials at that time. And honestly, I'm sad that I didn't have a hold of him a little bit better. But thank God he came back around, and he's now integrating with the community and reaching out and talking with everyone now too. But he's a great guy. I friggin' love him.
he's such a motivator, man. I talked to him today about this trip down. He's going to be bringing one of our other vets, and he's just so open about his experiences. He's integrated so much, and I'm like, at the end of the call, I'm like, you remind me of Sean Kieran just with your outwardness. He's very fucking. He said you're like his intrinsic opposite.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
He says you're the same thing, but you're more introverted. He's more extroverted.
Yeah, I am not like naturally an extrovert. I'm extremely introverted. Everything I've done over the previous 3 years has been completely against my nature. But it's all for the vets, it's all for my fellow vets. And what the fuck can I do? I have to reach out. I have to, to be this person. Otherwise, people will fall through the cracks and people will die. I mean, if I don't do this, and I think that all of us feel this way. Ian, Ryan, we all do this. None of us are really extroverts by nature, but we feel the need. We try. We absolutely strive to make sure nobody falls through the cracks. Anybody we know, if they fall through the cracks, we all feel personally responsible. And if something like that happens, we don't forgive ourselves very easily. And I think that this is all an attempt to overcome our own shortcomings and be the person the world needs us to be, because that's honestly what the military did too. The military asked us to be somebody we were not, in order to preserve life, and we all stepped up to the plate. We did that, And now we are continuing to do that in our own personal lives here in the civilian world, trying to make sure everybody gets by, everybody lives, and everybody comes home to their families.
Simple mission, man. I love it. With you.
Yeah, Jesse, I just want to say for me, it's like I did all this medicine work in the past, really, like over 20 years ago, without knowing how that I was fixing myself, and then raised a family. And then I met veterans 3 years ago, and they're telling their war stories, which I knew the stories, but I'm hearing them and I'm like, why is this making me cry? Why is this making me, things come out of me when they're telling these stories? And I just realized what we were all talking about now is that veteran love is the best medicine. So the support of veterans is medicine to one another. And that's what we're saying is that at least if we can make that connection separate from the other plant medicines they might want to try down the line, is just that connection of other veterans is what's going to keep these people alive.
100%. If you do it right, honestly, life itself is medicine. Every little action that we take, everything that we do can either serve to hurt ourselves or it can serve to heal ourselves. And if you act the right way and you do the right things, you reach out to your fellow man, then it's medicine and it helps heal you. That's honestly one of my favorite Ian Benouis quotes is veteran love is the best medicine, straight up.
Man, it's some of the most powerful medicine I've come across.
Me too.
It's so weird, man. Even today, dude, I'll go to like the American Legion and go play some pool with some old Salter Vietnam vets, and immediately, dude, I don't even have to waste 5 minutes for that guy to check me out and to make sure I'm safe to talk to you about certain things or whatever. It's just cut through all the bullshit. I'm a vet, he's a vet, and we don't have to worry about it. We can say anything we want.
Yeah, because it's like, when you've been willing to die, you're sort of right. You've died before you died, and then what have you got to lose? And that is a form of liberation that you can get through that sort of rite of passage of going to the military that other people might be in a spiritual practice, right? To try to get to. And it's like, well, you've had to face that. And so it does then, because that breed that instant camaraderie. You're like, oh, you face death too. All right, you got to be okay, I guess.
I'm gonna be the guy letting everyone down. Sean Kiernan is in his car and unfortunately can't connect to Skype at the moment.
Damn.
He's a bastard.
I think it's brilliant that you even tried to pull that off, man. So.
Like I told you guys before the podcast, I've never done 3 at a time, and I know that sounds weird, but 4 at a time would have been a little different. It's we're all meshing together quite well, which is good. Matt, a question for you. On your last podcast, you were talking about ayahuasca.
Yes.
You were referring to medical marijuana as a band-aid. Would you say ayahuasca is something further than that?
I definitely do think it is something further. Ayahuasca it's a different kind of medicine. Every medicine has its own purpose, and ayahuasca is just like every other medicine. It has its own purpose. I don't think that the vast majority of people, maybe they're not ready for ayahuasca right off the bat. I think that probably quite a few veterans might find a lot more comfort in cannabis right off the bat. But eventually they're going to get to a point where that cannabis band-aid is not enough and they're looking for something more. They've reached some kind of dead end, because I know I did. I reached a dead end in which I thought to myself, my God, I'm using cannabis. I've gotten a whole hell of a lot better, but where do I go from here? What the hell do I do? And cannabis simply just wasn't taking me to the place that I needed to go. So I started looking for other options. And ayahuasca, of course, presented itself, and I took a trip down to Soul Quest Church of Mother Earth with Ryan LeCompte and Michael Cooley, and it sparked a whole period of self affirmation and growth, and I leapt leaps and bounds above what I had done beforehand. But I don't think that I could have gotten to that point if I had not done all of the work I had done beforehand, with not just with cannabis, but just with sorting through my own emotions, my own feelings, my own thoughts. Those things had to be shooken out before I could actually get to the point where ayahuasca really took me to all these new places. I think that ayahuasca is definitely a step further for many vets. I don't necessarily think it's a one size fits all answer. You have to come to ayahuasca when you are ready and when you are called to it. There's no jumping into it. You have to know what you're getting into, and you have to want it. But once you do get to that point and you accept ayahuasca as just another tool that you can use to help heal yourself from the wounds, the trauma that you've had, then when you do get to that point of acceptance, you can derive extreme amounts of self-growth and healing, things that you never would have thought possible before.
Have all three of you been involved or seen ayahuasca been used before?
Yes.
Absolutely. We work pretty intimately. And
We've all drank
something else I wanted to plug. Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say, we've all drank. We've drank in pairs, but no, and we drank in pairs, and then once we all drank together. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I was just gonna plug Matt's story, dude. Like that, Matt covered every base there with his testimony, and that's what we're all about. He plugged the willingness to go, sort of feeling called when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of all the shit that's happening in your life. And once that place of ripeness and suffering is deep enough, we're really on the crisis. We're on the front line, like Ian was saying, with a lot of these programs, is we're trying to reach the hardest cases. Not every vet that we treat in fact, every vet that we treat has had to have tried VA therapy at least for 6 months, because not every vet that comes through our program that necessarily needs this. We want to encourage them to try all these different modalities. And most importantly, the harm reduction thing is getting them off these other medications and trying to get them on cannabis. The whole process takes a lot of willingness on the part of the vet that's like, I'm done. I'm done with the meds. I'm done with the therapies. I'm done with all of it. None of it's working. It may work for someone else, but it's just not working for me. So it's a very client-centered thing. It's very intimate and personal for the individual that goes through. And I mean, you can tell just from the way Matt was talking that he's speaking all heart, man. And most of the vets that talk from an ayahuasca perspective have been able to move from their heads to their hearts and just integrate this stuff. And like I said, this is a spiritual realm of consciousness that we're entering. So it's a very intimate, open-minded place that you get to. And so we just like to keep everyone in their own process and try to respect what they're going through as best we can and support them, and not try to get all guru-ish, because that's definitely something that's heavy in the ayahuasca world, and vets are not always susceptible to that, and it's great for them in that way. Just kind of encourage them and say, look, man, I've been through it, you've been through it, we know what it's like, we know those rabbit holes, but if you're willing to make a change, and that willingness, if it's always there and you always keep a willingness to try new things and look at your relationships and look at the different areas of your life that maybe were affected by your PTSD. That's really where the healing happens, is from the wellness change. And Ian, like he said, man, it's a lifetime process. So that's why I said we work with affirmations, we work with daily practices, because it takes a willingness to change those habits, and habits take a long time to break. And once that happens, people are equipped with tools that'll sustain them for the rest of their life, as opposed to being on medications all the time.
It's funny that you mentioned the spiritual aspect, because when I first got to Colorado, I'd been on VA therapy for a number of years, but when I got to Colorado, I met a doctor who told me something that I had never heard before, and he was a psychiatrist, and you know, being from the medical tradition, it was completely outside of the realm of possibility that he would say something like this to me, but he did. And he said, you have a spiritual wound. What you have experienced has wounded you spiritually, and you will never find healing until you find a spiritual method of healing, a spiritual mode of healing. And for the first time that I had ever actually talked to a psychiatrist, it rang true. That rang specifically true to me. And ever since that point in time, I've been trying to find some method of spiritual healing, and this really is sort of a new development, a new method of healing. It is spiritual. It gets you in touch with really what it means to be human again, I think. And
yeah, Matt. Oh man, you're getting me so excited, dude. It just makes me think about like how this integration process is really about setting up vets with a new way of life completely, which is so outside of the realm of like clinical treatment at the VA and stuff, where it's like, come here, we'll give you a pill, and then just come back tomorrow or come back next week and we'll check back in with you. This is such an awesome program and opportunity for vets to make lifestyle changes and a new way of living. I mean, you come through our program, and you leave with you come to our program with a problem, and you leave with a new way of life and a new set of values that means something to you. And that's the most powerful thing about this, is people have, it's a potential for a cure. I don't want to use the word, it gets at the root cause, and that is, I have to change my actions and my thoughts so that they align with each other and move toward positive change.
And it really is about what it means to you, because I mean, that's really what's missing, I think, from the VA method of care and the medical method of care, is you're going to someone else, sort of like some kind of priest doctor that tells you everything that is necessary for you to get better. But when that doesn't work, what's left? And what's missing really from that equation is what you think, what you believe for yourself, what is right, what is good, what is proper in order to live in this life, in order to get along with your fellow man. And that's what we're trying to find. That's what every veteran is trying to find again. What means something? What matters to you? To you. Doesn't matter what matters to the doctor. None of that makes a difference in your healing, really. They can give you tools in which you can help try to repair yourself, but ultimately you're the one who has to do the repairing. The doctor can't do that for you. So you have to find what means something to you. And that's what the doctor meant by saying a spiritual solution. It is something that is individual and that is unique to you as a human being. And in order to find that path, you have to have access to every single tool on the face of the planet. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter what plant it comes from. It doesn't matter what drug it comes from. It doesn't matter what chemical species it comes from. These are all just simply tools for us to figure out the right way for ourselves.
Yeah, and that's why medicine and religion are afraid of these tools, is because they disintermediate themselves, right? The institutions, when basically this is the problem with medicine. Like Matt said, you go to some kind of priest who tells you what to do, you're disempowered. You're not taking care of yourself. And basically what these medicines do, specifically what ayahuasca does, it allows you the opportunity for self-acceptance, for self-forgiveness, for self-healing. And basically there can't be any healing without healing yourself. There can't be any forgiveness without forgiving yourself. And we're not taught that, right? We're taught that forgiveness has to be, it's something external to us, right? From, you know, a separate Godhead or force or deity or whatever outside of us. Well, these medicines teach you that the beginning of realizing that is the divinity within, and entheogen is healing yourself and accepting yourself. And that's where it's all, you know, built on top of.
What does an ayahuasca process look like? Like what? I know a little bit about it from what you guys have told me, but do you guys mind telling a little bit about the whole process?
You mean like a ceremony?
Like, yeah, how it's ingested, what it does to the body.
The more the kind of scientific. Well,
Let's get science.
Sure. It's sure. Ayahuasca, number one, is a name of a mixture, right, that can mean lots of different things, but the sort of core agreement is the confusingly called ayahuasca vine, Banisteriopsis caapi, the MAOI, the monoamine oxidase inhibitor, combined with Psychotria viridis or other plants that also contain the DMT, also commonly called the chacruna. So if you put those chacruna leaves in your stomach, they don't work unless you have a monoamine oxidase to stop the enzyme in your body from breaking it down, so you can orally activate the DMT. And after half an hour, when that DMT starts to enter your bloodstream, then you have a DMT, a saturated experience versus a vaporized, but a super intense for, let's say 4 to 6 hours, where then you're feeling the effects of that medicine.
Wow.
Something that I will add to the serotonin, the way that DMT, for those that know what DMT is, the way the oral activation of ayahuasca has the potential for medicinal value because of the way it targets the serotonergic system in the brain. It's a genius system that works on certain receptors of the brain that neuroscientists are now calling the consciousness receptor, the 5 receptor, and that is responsible, supposedly so far, that what we've got.
Sorry, Ryan, we're having a real hard time hearing you.
Or ego or consciousness. Am I coming in?
No, not really there. Can you guys hear him okay?
Oh, let me pick up where Ryan left off. I think
Matt's got the neuroscience.
Yeah, sorry about that, Ryan.
Yeah, he was talking about the 5-HT, 2-alpha, and 2-Charlie subreceptors, and really
you would give it the military terms there, Matt. Well done.
You took the science to the next level.
Well, anyway, these that many indole alkylamine hallucinogens. I mean, hallucinogens is sort of a poor term, but the indole alkylamines, they all tend to attach to 2A and 2C subreceptors. My bad. It takes some effort to actually say that without the military terminology. But so these things, they attach to those receptors, and they can, through these subreceptors, they open up consciousness in a way that is not possible through normal experience, except through extreme rituals. There are some rituals in life and in other cultures that can open these receptors up to stimulation, but it's usually through extreme deprivation and other sorts of practices. Some yogic practices, they can cause these receptors to be stimulated, but the basic function of these receptors, so far we've been able to take pictures of people's brains when they're under the influence of these substances, and what we've found is that it seems to connect all regions of the brain together, basically opening up your brain to more connections and more deep exploration than you can achieve under normal states. So these things very often, especially, ayahuasca, for me, myself, I don't know about anybody else. I know about at least one other person, but ayahuasca tapped into memories that I had blocked off. I had just simply walled off for years and years and years. But when I got into those memories, they were just as fresh as the day that I had experienced them. And it was painful. It was painful. And my mind had been walling off that pain. I'd been trying not to feel that pain forever and ever. And once I actually got in there and I realized that the pain was something that I could take in and pass through and emerge on the other side with a new appreciation of what I had done and who I was as a person, then I could reintegrate those experiences into my regular everyday life and move on and simply get on with life. It was a revelation.
Yeah, and
something that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say to Jesse, so that's kind of some of the science. So maybe what's happening from a more, let's say psychological or psychospiritual perspective is, you're you're down regulating the ego, right? The default mode network, you're down regulating the amygdala, so you have less of a fear response. So when Matt's visiting those memories, he's completely walled off. He doesn't have the fear and hyper arousal that's going to, send him into panic and anxiety and stress. So he's able to go, okay, I can see that now. And then, right, the ego, which is trying to make some story to protect him, right, that's what it's been doing for him, creating this wall inside of his brain, inside of his mind. And it's, it's down regulated, so he can looking through there and see that, and then basically have then a wider perspective, a wider viewpoint to put that story back in a bigger context that he can accept, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. That's why it works so well for PTSD, is it targets the limbic system, and Matt bringing up that memory issue has a lot to do with the way the amygdala communicates with the hippocampus, and the hippocampus being the memory center that neuroscience calls the memory center, and the amygdala, like Ian was saying, in some cases I've seen where it can be an upregulating, where it actually increases the fight or flight response. But there's a quality to that, what we call in the world of psychology, the exposure therapy, being exposed to those memories, to sort of the same way EMDR would expose people with PTSD to their memories. But there's ayahuasca also acts as that distraction, where you tap your hand on one knee and you tap your hand on the other knee as you're recalling these experiences, like an EMDR. And that's where the shaman comes in. He's really like the guy that's helping you tap your hand to get back into your somatic experience, your body, to ground you through these experiences. So there is a risk there with people who have some deeply rooted trauma and they get hyper aroused in those states. But exposure therapy is one of the most powerful methods that we have in therapy right now to help people with PTSD. It's the fast track to recovery. And like Matt said, it's not for everybody. MDMA would be a better one, where it sort of quiets the fear response, whereas ayahuasca can sometimes make it go faster and connect those parts of your brain, including the prefrontal cortex, which is really where we make that meaning happen. So if you have those states come up and you're struggling with some of the memories, you have a neural pathway. You have a lot of neural pathways that open up, and this has been shown through fMRI brain scans, like Matt was saying, where the prefrontal cortex lights up, and so it becomes more manageable when you can move those memories into the front part of your brain and your human brain and make meaning of those things. Because in PTSD, those connections aren't there. I mean, we know that with neural scans, is that there's no connection. There's literally severed connections between your mammalian brain and your human brain. And these psychedelics, MDMA does the same thing. Cannabis to a degree, if used mindfully, and it takes a lot more effort to do it that way. But these plants, man, they're smart, and they have a way for the brain where we just, through trauma, through experience, through pain and suffering, we just sever those things and we forget who we are. It's really fucking amazing work that these medicines provide.
I would also add that MDMA, because it sort of quiets the fear response, it does help you go into those memories. Definitely it does. But because it quiets that fear response and allows you to explore these things without that element, it sort of takes that element out, even though it was part of the original experience too. The original experience involved plenty of fear. That is always a part of trauma. So I think that the indoalkylamines, as opposed to phenethylamines, like MDMA is a phenethylamine. It's more related to some of the stimulants out there, but the indoalkylamines are almost entirely entheogenic in their response. So they tend to bring you a little bit deeper, I think. MDMA is a good introduction to stimulating these receptors and opening up your brain to the full experience of life and the full experience of these memories that you've walled off for however many years. But in order to really get deep down into them, I think that you really need to start exploring some of the indoalkylamine entheogens, things like ayahuasca, and even some other Native American rituals have substances like these. The peyote rituals of some of the Indians in the Southwest, they're extremely valuable in stimulating these receptors and also stimulating the memories that is associated with these traumatic experiences in life, and it can help you integrate these experiences and get over them.
Have you
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with Matt. Yeah, the mescaline has also got a lot of potential.
Have you guys ever seen a bad experience with ayahuasca?
Yes.
Do tell.
Ian knows about this one.
Yeah.
Ian, you want to go into this one, or you want me to?
I'm not sure if I have the proper clearance, and even if I do, I don't know if I have a need to. No, that's. Yeah.
Okay.
The point is that, is that these, Jesse, these plants, these substances, they're psychic magnifiers, and why it is so important to have the right ceremony, container, the right setting, the right mindset going in. Those that are all really important, to be able to pull it off right. And so, definitely, and this is a big part of what Ryan's saying about this whole screening process that he has at Vet, to make sure people are ready for it. You got to be called to medicine, but you also have to have the constitution, the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual constitution to hold the medicine, to do the work with the medicine, to have the whole, commitment to doing the reintegration after. So you really got to have, that whole thing to be able to pull it off. And then the people that have problems I've seen is where I know someone, they didn't disclose that they were on SSRIs. They had the classic worst possible thing you can do, worse than, not following the diet. And they had the serotonin syndrome. They had a psychotic break. For 5 days, they had to be babysat. And thank God, the circle that I was in for that, someone was a sponsor of that person, bringing that person into the medicine, right, sitting with them, drinking the medicine too, and then, helping them reintegrate. So when there was some issue, and that person, had this thing happen because they didn't disclose it, that person, the sponsor, had to, be the primary person to help that person through the process. And then there's just people, can take the medicine in ceremony and either fight the medicine or just have a response where, they're not able to hold it, and it basically becomes the center of the whole process for everyone.
Well, I have to add here also, there's been a quite a bit of research done on individuals who have had, quote, bad trips. Everybody's like afraid of the, quote, bad trip, and there's a little bit of research that's been done on it, and they've gone back and talked to people who have had bad trips, whether on ayahuasca or psilocybin or mescaline, or LSD, all of the indolechylamines. If you go back and talk to the people who have had bad trips or bad experiences years after the fact, 2 years, 5 years, a decade, and you ask them, hey, what do you think about your experience under the influence of this substance? And universally, almost every single one will say, even though it was a horrible experience at the time, they may have been terrified, they may have been paralyzed by fear, but they will universally say that it was one of the most profound experiences of my life, and I am a better person for it. And to me, what that tells me is that these substances are putting people back in touch with a very core part of their being that maybe, yes, it is absolutely terrifying, absolutely just shocking to come across, but that part of you is real, and it's not to be suppressed. It's not something that we need to get rid of, throw out, and just ditch. It's something that is a necessary part of ourselves. It's a necessary part of our constitution, a necessary part of our humanity. And that's what it's putting us back into touch with. And these people are realizing the benefits from being back in touch with their whole being.
Yeah, battling those demons, man. I to bounce off what Matt was saying, it's all this stuff for healing. The pink clouds of oneness and love and transcendence and all that stuff. Matt's really on something that I feel like has the biggest potential. Trips in the containers there. People have opportunities to purge or throw up their traumatic experiences or stuff. And Buddhism really creates a container for that too. I come from a Buddhist background. It's about the Four Noble Truths. The basic one is just attachment is what causes suffering. And these vets have an opportunity to fucking themselves of attachment and to cling, centered stuff like Ian was saying. And the other piece was really the only other risk is that is a physical risk that we screen for. Any associative disorders, we tend to screen and get them in touch with their disorder from a holistic perspective, a transpersonal perspective. Because what we're doing is creating a more dissociative experience than they're already in. So they're always in that ayahuasca round. We just have to work on more of a somatic approach with their bodies and on their experience without medications and stuff. So it's a process. We want to optimize their experience to get them into that mode of
Right. Is ayahuasca a like a one-time thing, or is it you got to go back for more?
I think that depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who can take ayahuasca one time and gain benefit from that for the rest of their lives. Honestly, I think probably almost everybody that takes ayahuasca can probably gain insight and experience from that one experience that will benefit them for the rest of their lives. But there are people who it's that one experience sometimes is not enough. I think that a lot of times that people come to ayahuasca or people come to cannabis and people come to a lot of other substances and they think that's just the fix, that's just the be all end all. If I just take this thing, I'll be fine. And that is not the right answer, period. It is not the be all end all. It is not the final solution. This is a process. When when I went to Soul Quest Ayahuasca Mother Church or Ayahuasca Church of Mother Earth, the first day they asked me, what do you think ayahuasca is? And I honestly forget what I said the first 2 days, but the first 2 days it was something like healing and something like that. But on the final day that I was there, I remember very clearly, I said to myself, this is not a destination for healing. This is not the end point. This is the beginning. And what I realized then is that this is work. This is not the solution. This is the beginning of a whole hell of a lot of work in order to fix yourself. And if you cannot sit there and do the work to try to fix yourself, you will never gain anything from either ayahuasca or any other substance for that matter. It doesn't matter whether it's cannabis, ayahuasca, peyote, MDMA, none of that. None of that will fix you. You have to fix yourself. Period.
Is there like an average?
Ideal, man.
What was that?
Matt's the ideal candidate for this work. He's got like if every vet that came across my had that willingness that Matt, it just clicked for him. He had a fucking huge, and the work starts after the ceremony, and it's program. You get guys like Matt and David and others just ready to do the work.
Yeah, Jesse, just, like everyone's saying, it just totally depends, right? I took my, son right before his 18th birthday as a rite of passage to do ayahuasca. It was an amazing experience, a 3-day ceremony. And, I'm like, hey, are you called to medicine again? He's like, no, not really. He's like, I'm good, and the sort of joke, like when you talk about that, right, with your friends is, man, I wish I was 18 and had that chance to, right, have a rite of passage and see where I was at and, go into the world. Sort of what if that was potentially available for everyone who was called to it? And so, yeah, me, I'm fixing, a childhood trauma. And the good news is somebody who doesn't have that, maybe they only do need to take it, 1 weekend in their life.
Is there an average though that you'd say? Like what's an average number to before people say, okay, I'm good?
No, I think it just totally depends. I'm with this one veteran, like I said, he's taken it a bunch, and he just had his real big first transformations. And I'll say the big one is pain. It's the biggest thing around pain is that the only way in this medicine work is through. And the pain is ultimately information, and so ultimately it's information about yourself that you have to accept. And like Ryan's saying, it's totally tied up in your body. It's totally stored somatically, but it's information that's who you are that you have to integrate into yourself. And until you do that, you're going to be in pain forever. And that's ultimately what this is about, is getting in touch with yourself, having a conversation with yourself, all the different parts of your body, and integrating them all together.
Amen.
That's what the end all is really this, like,
Sorry, Ryan, we're losing you.
integration process is really. Can you hear me?
You're cutting in and out.
Hello?
There, bud.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh no. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you better now, yeah.
Okay, what I was saying was bouncing off.
Sorry, we're losing you again, Ryan.
Yeah, Jesse, so it really depends. And you're going back to what everyone's been saying about the different medicines, right? There's different pathways. Some people will never need or go or want to go to ayahuasca because MDMA might be everything that they need. And so it's really completely personal. And something I want to throw back into this whole conversation is the biggest correlator for PTSD and war is childhood trauma. So ultimately, this is a bigger problem. We all know beyond just veterans, it's a problem of trauma in general, and really trauma doesn't care the source of it, and you still have to work on it the same way. So,
yeah, this is one of the things that I came across in my own work with Veterans for Natural Rights. We started getting people together, and once we started getting people together, I started realizing how many veterans had trauma that was not rooted in combat. I myself, I have combat trauma. And of course, I have some childhood trauma that kind of set off, but I didn't really realize that the two were connected at first. And I don't think that the vast majority of veterans or civilians understand how connected all of their trauma is. But the truth is that we are all just simply balls of trauma, as we've all collected from a very, very early age. Sometimes it's childhood trauma, sometimes it's childhood neglect, sometimes it's sexual assault, sometimes it's combat, sometimes it's a car accident, sometimes it's watching a loved one die. It could be something as simple as holding your father's hand as he dies from cancer and seeing what that looks like. It can be extremely traumatic. But people, they have definite dysfunctions as a result of all these traumas that they're exposed to over the course of their life. And I started to realize how much trauma that people have. There's this massive stored repository of trauma in our everyday civilian society. Things that, veterans, we are the face of PTSD right now. No doubt. No doubt. Everybody got clued into what PTSD was because of us. But now that they understand what PTSD is, it's up to veterans now to tell everyone that, listen, this is not confined to combat trauma. This is not confined to just military people. This is spread out amongst our entire population. And there are the vast majority of people that have PTSD are civilians. The minority is veterans. But because we have the public face of PTSD right now, we have to hold these people up, and we have to make society see them for what they are, because they're just as damaged as us, and they deserve all the things that we do too. They deserve all of the treatment and all of the options, all of the access to cannabis and ayahuasca and everything else that we are given. We need to bring this to the people.
Do all three of your organizations work with people who aren't veterans?
I do. I know I do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in other words, we're not out actively soliciting people, right, to give them the same services they're giving veterans, but you're working with other people who aren't veterans because you're working with these people and their families and their support systems, right, which are full of other people that aren't veterans. So their spouses, their kids, but yeah, not providing the same direct services, right?
Yeah, one of the things I think that is often overlooked is what is called secondary PTSD. Secondary PTSD is really, it's what happens to your family members when they see a person undergo PTSD. They try to kill themselves. They try to hurt themselves. They suffer. And the fact is when you cause suffering unto yourself, you also inflict suffering on the people around you. And that suffering causes a form of PTSD. It's called secondary PTSD. They are looking at you and they're traumatized by what has happened to you. So we have to recognize the fact that every single veteran on the face of the planet, we're inflicting PTSD on our entire families. And they're not veterans. They haven't been to military. They haven't gone to war. They haven't been in the military. They haven't done any of these things. But they still have PTSD because of what we have done to ourselves. And the same is true for everybody else that has primary PTSD, whether it happens from sexual assault or it happens from childhood abuse. These people are damaged. Everyone is damaged, and they inflict that damage on everyone around them. This is not an isolated problem, and it is throughout our entire culture and every culture on the face of the planet. We need to recognize these people, and we need to help them.
How about your organization, Ryan? Do you guys work with a lot of civilians or mostly just veterans?
So you can make sure, is it jumbled still, or?
Yeah, sorry, we can't understand you.
That's probably my internet.
Sorry, are you still there, Ryan?
Well, I'll jump in, Jesse. Through all this work and connecting these different organizations, I had, for myself, learned about this thing called the Adverse Childhood Experience Report. It's just a 10-question survey anyone can go online and do. And it gives you a score from 0 to 10 based on, traumatic experiences in your life. And as an example, if you have a 6 or higher out of this 10 scale score, you're 4,300% more likely to try to commit suicide or do injectable drugs in your life. So, the reality is that, and I didn't know this for myself until the military, because I'm like, I didn't go to Iraq or Afghanistan. I went to Panama, so I definitely don't have any trauma from war. But you're filling out this PTSD, this like questionnaire, and it's like, it says, okay, were people ever killed in your job? It's like, did you ever witness it firsthand? Did you ever hear about it from someone else? Did someone else tell you about it? Was it part of the daily routine? And then, it's like, were you exposed to, explosives and toxic chemicals? And you just start to answer these questions, and you realize, I witnessed these things. I heard about them. They were part of daily life where people were dying or getting killed or getting blown up, and you just realize being in the military, your everyday life, is a good chance for, insane and death to visit you, on a regular basis, or really, really traumatic things. And so, that was really something that I just never, fully understood and appreciated until really just recently.
One thing I learned on this podcast from a guy named Joshua, he lives in Ireland, is that in Northern Ireland, per capita, there's more PTSD than anywhere else in the world. Just a fun fact for you guys.
Wow. What's the reason for that? What do they attribute that?
Well, I'm not very knowledged on it, so I don't want to say anything wrong here, but there was what they called the Troubles in Ireland between the North and the South, and British rule and the wanting of not British rule.
So I thought there was something more specific than that, than just the Well, I'll tell you this: we live in a world where you mass media, things happen all the time, right? There's stabbings here, there's people getting blown up. If you have an open heart and you actually pay attention, you can't not have PTSD if you're just a person living in the world today. So I think that's where we're at these days, is that this is like, Matt's saying, Ryan's saying, it's not just veterans, it's also civilians, but it's the whole world. I mean, we have a serious mental health problem where at current rates, depression will be the #1 killer by 2020. So this country, we better sort out our mental health or we're in big trouble.
Do you guys have any important dates coming up for your organizations? Matt?
Yeah, I'm
Hold
back,
on a
guys.
second,
Can
I'm
you hear
dealing
me?
with a fire alarm here.
Oh, dude.
Oh, shit.
Sorry, guys. I'm just putting out a fire.
It seems to be like a daily occurrence for me.
I thought you guys dabbed in Colorado, Matt.
I'm in Arizona.
Your house, are you?
Yeah, I'm in Arizona, man. They're prone.
That's right. Oh, you're all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say that probably for Veterans for Natural Rights, our most important upcoming dates are in the month of July. We have a series of equine therapy events. They're every single Wednesday for the entire month of July. Every veteran is welcome to come, and it's held in Woodland Park, Colorado. After that, we'll have a few other events throughout the summer and the fall. It's mainly community building events. We're doing all kinds of things in order to try to get veterans together and civilians too, and get them all integrated into a community so that we can all start interacting with the real world again. But if we can somehow get veterans together and doing these activities, things that are fun, things that veterans would like, heck, bubble ball sucker, bubble ball soccer. You know, it's just
Bubble ball sucker.
yeah, bubble ball soccer. It's it's something fun. It's interesting. I just came up with the idea. I was like, you know, a few veterans were like, that looks awesome, and I was like, okay, let's do it.
Is that when you're in the big like germ ball?
Kind of, yeah. It's like a hamster ball almost, and you're running around like kicking a soccer ball around, and you knock into other people and bounce people, you know, 10, 20 feet. It's fun. It's low impact. It's fairly low impact.
It sounds just like the military. It sounds like the military. You fucking run around and do a bunch of shit, but nothing really ever, ever actually happens.
He sounds like a recruiter.
Yeah.
It's fairly low in contact.
Yeah, but the idea is just to get people together and get these communities so that we can start healing amongst ourselves and introduce them to the idea of cannabis as medicine, of ayahuasca. Introduce them to.
Oh no, we're losing Matt now.
They're. Oh no.
No, you're.
My apologies.
No, it's all good.
Okay, so you know, these things are just designed to get people together and get them in a community where we can start introducing them to more ideas, ideas of plant medicine and cannabis as medicine and ayahuasca as medicine, all these different things. But eventually, you know, I think around November 11th, Veterans Day this year, Veterans for Natural Rights will hold a large fundraiser. We're filing for 501c4 right now. We need to preserve our political voice. That's why we're filing for 501c4 instead of 501c3, so we can continue our lobbying efforts to change laws within the United States to allow plant medicines in general. We're not just stopping at cannabis, although cannabis is one of our main priorities right now. We want to preserve and protect the ability of every veteran and every civilian, for that matter, to access the plant medicines that they need. But we want to go beyond that. We want to go and preserve and protect the people's right to explore ayahuasca, the people's right to explore peyote cactus, the people's right to explore San Pedro cactus, the people's right to explore MDMA as therapy. There are a whole host of chemical species that are out there that can serve as amazing vectors of healing for not just veterans but civilians too. So we're pushing for that, and around November 11th we'll probably have our first real fundraiser for Veterans for Natural Rights, and we invite everybody to come out to Denver and participate.
Well, guys, I've loved having you on. It's unfortunate we had a little bit of technical difficulties. Ryan, are you still with us?
Yeah, coming in.
Yeah, well, good to hear you now. Again, like I just want to say, I'd love to have you on just to hear your entire story. And Ian, great catching up with you again. And Matt, you know, you're fighting fires during the podcast. You're changing veterans' lives. You're quite inspirational, man.
I appreciate it, man. Hopefully, the fire alarm didn't ruin the podcast too much.
Oh no, it's you know, we got 4 people in completely different places in the world. Stuff's bound to come up. My dog, I'm very surprised, wasn't barking right in the microphone, so that's a positive there. Do any of you guys have dogs at home?
I do.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, a German Shepherd Beagle.
I don't know about you guys, but that's a massive stress reliever for me when I come home from work after a long shift or time in the field and I'm stressed out. That dog just makes it melt away.
Well, it's one of the things that is extremely popular for everybody who has PTSD of any kind, is taking care of an animal of any kind, whether it's a dog or whether it's a horse or a llama or a goat. A lot of people find a lot of fulfillment in taking care of another living being, because it teaches them to get outside of their own brains and start thinking about what it means to fulfill another living thing. And it can be done simply by growing a plant. If you want to grow cannabis, that's one way that a lot of veterans find a lot of therapy is starting to grow and taking care of another living thing besides themselves.
Right, because connection is the opposite of addiction, and that's what we've learned, right?
Absolutely.
Well, guys, this has been. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
I guess I just want to plug our fundraising campaign and our goal for $250,000 by the end of this year. If anyone's out there that's willing to donate if you like what you've heard today on this podcast and a lot of what Matt and Ian have mentioned about ayahuasca, our organization specializes in harm reduction and getting these vets down for treatment. All these thoughts, ideas, and philosophies and feelings into action, getting these guys down, and it goes to a worthy cause. Veterans for Entheogenic Therapy, and our donate button. Just click the donate tab on our website. It's really easy to find, vetentheogenic.org/donate. You can use any form of method for payment through a PayPal. That'll go directly to our 501c3 bank account. So thank you, guys. Yeah, our goal is to reach 500 vets.
What we're going to do is we're going to put a link and all that information on our site and on our social media, and we'll do our best to make that known.
Thanks for having us on, Jesse. And Ian, thanks for plugging me in this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
Oh, no problem. Just getting started here. Guess what, guys? I'm going to ask you all to come back on. Probably 5 or 10 more times, because that's just the kind of person I am. We got 19 of these done in a couple of weeks here, so we're flying. We're connecting a lot of people, except I was actually kind of thinking I'd be connecting you guys, but out of the 4 people I invited on here, it sounds like you're all best friends, so I'm kind of a little late to the show there.
You know what, Jesse? Your podcast is just like ayahuasca. As many times as it takes, brother. As many times.
Exactly. That's awesome.
That's great.
We'll keep on coming back and doing the work, man.
All right, guys. Well, this has been the Vapes for Vets podcast, brought to you by Namaste Technologies. Until next time, guys, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.